All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's show. We are back with another Election Day show, and today we're talking to a very special guest live from Texas. We have Clara Morse joining us, and Clara, she is very much been following the political scene, and she has probably, granted I haven't met many young journalists, but of the ones I have met, she is like very good, I must say. That's why I invited her on. And also because Texas, a lot of things are going on in Texas, and if there's any way to break it down, it would be her. So, and just generally across the country. So, let's start by asking Clara, what has your midterm experience been like so far?
There's definitely been a level of excitement here that I think parallels the ones that we've seen across the country. The Beto-Ted Cruz race has obviously gotten a lot of people excited. In fact, in my county, in Travis County, which is in Austin, more people have voted in early voting so far than voted in total in the entire 2014 midterm. So
Wow.
the excitement and the hype around voting has just been really, really insane.
So, I'm assuming it's a pretty Beto-centric area. It's an urban area, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah. So there's been, a lot of Beto signs we've seen, a lot of Beto stickers. The Austin area is expected to swing for Beto in this election just because, blue cities.
Yeah.
But there has been, some degree of debate, I think, and public awareness, I suppose, about the Senate race, about both candidates in the Senate race, although Beto more so, that we really haven't seen in past years, which I think has also helped to bring some attention to even non-Senate races, statewide races in Texas.
So was Ted Cruz always this kind of unpopular? Was he always this vulnerable, or did it just take someone like Beto O'Rourke to really expose him for just kind of being weak in a way? Yeah.
I think that Ted Cruz was coming into this election from a weak spot, just because of the sort of, public attention he got from the presidential run that wasn't all positive, and he definitely hasn't been the most likable elected public official in Texas. But I don't think anybody was expecting such a strong challenger. Texas hasn't elected a Democrat to a statewide position in over 20 years. I can't find the exact number right now, but it's been a very long time. And so for Beto to come out really drew, I think, a lot more attention to sort of the weaknesses that Ted Cruz has had for a while, and sort of presented almost the perfect contrast to his style.
Yeah, they definitely are really polar opposites, and I was wondering, what has been the most effective sticking point during the campaign that Beto, the attack Beto has been able to land on Ted Cruz, or vice versa?
I think the degree of engagement Beto has been able to come up with visiting every county in Texas, and executing all of that has been a really strong contrast to Ted Cruz's maybe more standoffish style. And, comparatively to the current elected senators, Ted Cruz probably isn't abnormally disengaged, but Beto just does such a fantastic job of going around and talking to everybody, Republicans and Democrats and everybody, which compared to Ted Cruz's style of basically saying, well, Texas is a red state, and it's going to be a red state, and there aren't Democrats in Texas, so we're going to win.
Yeah,
which has been some of his message this campaign.
Yeah, he's pretty much, what I've gotten from him is there's more Republicans than Democrats, so we're gonna be all right. As opposed to Beto's really been able, he's been portraying himself as a man of the people. From what we hear, nationwide, I don't know if this has been such a big thing with you. Everyone's talking about how he skateboards and he does Facebook live streams and everything like that.
Yeah, I think he's definitely taken a sort of strategy that goes against the political norm, not just in terms of, being a Democrat in Texas, but also because he has spent so much time reaching out to groups that don't traditionally vote, like college students are a big one, young people, Latinos in Texas are a very large component of the population, but they vote at a rate that's significantly below the average voting rate. So he's been really reaching out to these people who a lot of polls say aren't going to vote. So I think I've lost track of the question a little bit, but I guess the main thing for him has just been sort of trying to reach across the board, even to these groups that many don't see as likely voters. And just, I guess the big test tonight is going to be whether they actually turn out and turn up to vote.
Do you think there's reason to believe that the polls may be inaccurate because, as you know, the polls only poll likely voters, and there could be more out there for Beto O'Rourke in terms of the people that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a lot of like people who self-identify as likely voters, so it's not like they're just like, oh, well, you know, older white people have only voted in the past, so we're only going to poll older white people. Like, that's not the situation, I don't think, with the polls. But I do think if there is a wave of college students, and young people especially, that will probably have been underpredicted. And if that does come through, that will be a really positive sign for Beto.
Do you see Beto being able to garner those people enough so like he could make a win, or is there just like too much is there too much to handle for Beto?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, do you see Beto pulling this one off?
Honestly, I think it's going to be very tight either way. I think he has an excellent shot, and with the turnout numbers we have been seeing, I think he has a pretty good chance. But in terms of likelihood to win, it's probably Ted Cruz. I would say my money is on Ted Cruz to come out on top, simply because, you know, Beto's plateaued in the polls a little bit recently. He's been sitting pretty consistently, like 5 or so points under Cruz, and you know, depending on turnout, that could shift. So I think it's really going to come down to the wire on this one.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of the most intensely watched races in the country, and there has been a lot of outside. I think it's the most expensive race in history. Like,
yep.
Has there or Senate race, I believe. There has been like a lot of kind of resentment. There's been a lot of is there a lot of resentment from some people in Texas about how much big money is getting in the way, and people like the Fire Ted Cruz pack that got some ads in there that with that old Texas guy, like, has that kind of been a point of annoyance that so like Texans are getting interfered on with like everyone else for this race?
I mean, I don't really think so. I think that Beto's whole shtick of, you know, I'm not going to take PhD money, I'm not going to take, you know, dark money, quote unquote, has been an effective one. Mm-hmm. And I think it does speak to the strength of his candidacy that he's been able to raise so much in this race that, you know, on the surface does not seem like it should be competitive. But I mean, it takes so much energy and so much strength to run as a Democrat in Texas on a statewide level, given that there's zero recent history of success there. So I don't think there's too much bitterness. I think some people wish that the sort of Beto energy could be transferred to other Democratic candidates for statewide positions, like, you know, governor or attorney general. But so far, there's probably going to be a jump in turnout, but most of that support has gone like straight to Beto. So I'd say that might be a source of tension. But
so I was like, what else is we hear so much obviously about Beto, Ted? Like, what else is going on? Is there anything interesting with the governor's race or any House race? I heard there was interesting.
I haven't been following the House race too closely. I know in the governor's race, it's very interesting because Democratic candidate Lupe Valdez had one debate with Governor Greg Abbott, and I don't remember whether he said her name like twice or three times during the entire debate, but his strategy has just sort of been ignoring her, basically. So there's the odds that she's going to be able to pull off a win are pretty low. I think most of the other statewide positions, nobody really has the charisma of Beto, or doesn't have the X factor, I guess, that he has, that has made him such a powerful politician, even on a national scale. And so even running against these people that really haven't faced competition in a while, most of the statewide races are just not competitive. The Attorney General's race is interesting because our current Attorney General, Republican Ken Paxton, was indicted for corruption, I believe, or something regarding that pertained to his job. And there have been a lot of attack ads, from the Democratic challenger, Justin Nelson, I believe his name is, about that. But Democrats in Texas are just really in an underdog role right now. So Beto's is definitely the most competitive statewide race to be watching.
Definitely, I think I'm getting sense like more of an outlier as opposed to anything, and that is very interesting. Like, do you think his campaign? You see people like Claire McCaskill, Joe Donnelly. They're very much running right-wing Democratic campaigns. Do you think Beto's decision to maybe tack a little bit more to the left has helped him gain a little bit more of an exposure?
Yeah, for sure. I think on a national level, for sure, I think the guts it takes is very appealing to a lot of media people on the national level. Just in terms of being a Texan running for statewide office, which again has not happened in 2 decades. And saying, yeah, I want legal marijuana. Like, yes, I think we need to reform border control. Who says impeach Trump? Like, who has these very radical ideas and has still managed to amass this following, basically based on the strength of his political skills and his charisma and his ability, I guess, to connect with people. Which I think is a very, very promising story. Although I'm afraid I really can't say whether that's going to translate to a promising strategy nationwide. And obviously, we'll see if it was a good strategy for Beto tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be a tough thing to decide there in the end. But a lot of people, I think the very interesting thing is that Trump, like in most things, he has played a little bit of dynamic in this race. He held a rally, I believe, late last month for Ted Cruz in October. It was supposed to be a big thing, and that was obviously after the very stressful relationship they've had, trading insults in the campaign, Ted Cruz not endorsing Trump during the convention, but then really coming back to Trump's feet after the convention, when things got tough. He obviously, I'm sure you've seen, and many Texans have seen the video of the phone banking for Ted Cruz for Trump, and now of course Trump's out rallying. How much has Trump really played an effect with Texans?
I think that's tricky. I think people would like to think it plays a bigger role than it does. Because a lot of this race has played to, national politics, national ideas, and 2 different ideas about, what Texas is. But I feel like Donald Trump, I'm not sure here. Let me gather my thoughts for a second.
And I think also the interesting more thing, it was how it would be affecting Trump Cruz voters, because there is probably a difference in them about who voted for what. But I get the sense Texas is very kind of a Trump, like the Republicans who are in Texas, they're probably pretty big Trump supporters, I would assume. And do they view how can they reconcile their support with Trump and Cruz?
I mean, I think there has been a little bit of a sense of a disconnect almost with sort of all the rhetoric about the border wall and all, that stuff, versus like what's actually happening on the ground in Texas.